Hello, welcome back to Reads with an Apple. My name is Stacy, and I'm here to fill out my favorites of 2022 bracket, this time for fantasy romance. If you did not see my previous video, I'll link it up above. I've already done contemporary, and so I will kind of go over my basics again with you in case you haven't seen that. If you've already seen that, feel free to fast forward until you see me kind of start talking about the books here. But yeah, I changed some things up from last year. I shuffled around the brackets just to kind of do a different mix of who's against who. And I read a lot of fantasy romance this year. It was hard to fill out my bracket, but in a different way because it was hard to pick a favorite. I had so many favorites. I am including some urban fantasy romances here because I read so much of them. So yeah, let's just get into it. Okay, so here we are on my computer screen. If you hear my kitty going crazy in the background, it's because my brother just made some bacon and she got a little piece, and she is a little meat carnivore lover and she's freaking out because she wants more bacon. So if she is very loud, I am sorry. But let's kind of start off going through kind of some things of what's going on. So here is the bracket that I created for fantasy romance this year. I have the blank brackets saved. I made an extra copy of one as a blank template, and I have that linked in my link tree down below if you're interested in filling out the bracket yourself. And you can use any of them. I have them for all of my 5 subgenres, so feel free to use them. If you fill it out, please let me know because I'd love to see if you fill them out as well. But yeah, so here we go. Slightly different, like I said, this year. We've got January versus October, March versus December, May versus bonus book number 2, July versus bonus book number 4, September versus February, November versus April, bonus book 1 versus June, and bonus book 3 versus August. Now I do a 16 seed bracket so I can have one favorite of the month and then 4 extra bonus books. Now, I did also do kind of a brief rundown this year to kind of help myself keep track of it throughout the year. So here are all of the books that we are going to talk about on my bracket, plus 3 honorable mentions. Now, I will kind of just show you here. We're going to read through these books piece by piece, and then I will be reading off of this sheet. I created this as myself, and this just has the basic information, what I rated it, the blurb about the book. So I will be reading off of this for the information while we talk about the books, and then we will come back and we will fill out the bracket. As you can see, little teaser here, I have it already prepped. Now, I created all of this on Canva this year, and I am going to fill it out in Canva as well. Last year I did it using Photoshop 5, I think is the one that I have on my computer. But this year we're just going to keep it straight Canva. So let us talk about the books that you will see on my bracket. So let me just kind of zoom in here. So let's start off with a bang. In January, we have Magic Minds by Alona Andrews. This is the 9th book in the Kate Daniels series. I mean, the penultimate for the main story of Kate Daniels. I gave this 5 stars. Most of the books in this series are 5 stars for me. I mean, I love Kate and Curran. I mean, we've got them making their relationship official in this book. We've got them, really kind of, getting married. And at the end of this, we get Kate getting pregnant or having visions about their son. And and we start out with a bang because Roland, her father, kidnaps Simon, and there's so much going on, so much that is both kind of wrapping up the previous 8 books and novellas, but also really kind of laying that final groundwork we need for the final book in the series. I mean, I loved it. The series just gets better and better with each book, and the way that it ends is just magnificent. But here, because we get their wedding and we get them really fighting to find time together with so much going on, I feel like the romance, while it is a part of the series as a whole, I feel like it's a little bit more prevalent here, because they are, like, even though we don't see very much of them actually together, when they are together, they're really trying to make the most of the moments that they have together alone and with their immediate family. And I love it. I love it. As you can see, there's a lot of Alona Andrews coming up on this breakdown. So February, this is a hard one. We've got Pharaoh Feb for Fantasy Romance February. This is very difficult to choose a favorite fantasy romance off of February, but I had to give it to Enthralling the Orc by Tracy Lauren. This is the second book in her Perished Woods series. I gave this 5 stars. I love the first book. This book was just as good. And this is a half orc and a human, and it picks up and it is actually the aunt of the heroine from the first book, traveling out into the Perished Woods with Ash, who is the half-orc, to help find her niece, who ended up being paired with a troll in the first book, and it was just so good. It was different, though. We dealt with some different kind of issues in this book. We dealt with some slightly different prejudices in this book. Things got super crazy when we meet his brother, and I was just like, what is happening? And I'm very intrigued. There was a little bit of a teaser about his brother being the third book in the series, but I haven't seen any news about it so far. But I was a big fan of this series so far. I'm a big fan of Tracy Lauren. Definitely check out these books. Now for March, surprisingly, I didn't read any fantasy romance. So I pulled a bonus book and I decided to go with Sapphire Flames by Alona Andrews. This is the 4th book in Hidden Legacy, and this is the first book in Catalina's trilogy within Hidden Legacy. So if you have not read Hidden Legacy, the first 3 books are centered around Nevada, the eldest sister. Then there is a 3.5 Bridger novella, and then the next 3 books are centered around Catalina as the main heroine, who's the middle sister, and then hopefully in the future we will get a trilogy set around the youngest Baylor daughter, but that is outside of what has been published and what has been promised to the fans. But let's go back to Sapphire Flames. Like I said, this is the first book with Catalina and Alessandro. I gave this 5 stars. Don't get me wrong, I love Nevada. But I, as a reader, connected so much more to Catalina and the way that her journey kind of really starts and she really grows into herself and her role as the new head of household and as the deputy warden for where they are. And so good. And we get Alessandro, and we don't exactly know who he is, what persona's real, if he's a hitman, if he's this playboy socialite prince dude. Like, he has so many personas and is trying to figure out which is the real one. And he is so drawn to Catalina, and Catalina had a crush on him, but she's such a little shy girl. Plus, we get to learn so much more about her powers and really see her come into her own with her powers, and that continues throughout the trilogy. I think that the big bads, so to speak, in each book really kind of upgraded, and the stakes were heightened a lot more than with Nevada and Rogan. And every time we got to the big final battle scene in the 3 books in Catalina's trilogy, I was just completely mind blown and astounded on what was happening. And Yeah, and this was the first book to kick it out, so I had to give it to this one because this was the first in the trilogy that I had kind of sitting aside as a potential bonus book when I got to filling out my brackets. Then we get to April. April was the end of the Kate Daniels read-along. We read the Kate Daniels spin-off new series, Aurelia Rider, the first book of which is Blood Heir. And Aurelia Rider is actually Julie, Kate, and Curran's adoptive daughter. And she has changed her face. She has done some training. This is years in the future. And she is back as Aurelia Rider. Derek has disappeared as well and is back and is way more powerful. And things are going on with Derek. And it's just like mind blown. And it was super fun to be back. The only really big sad part is that, you know, for plot reasons and for why Aurelia, aka Julie, is back in town, is because of the new big bad that she's facing off with. And if she has contact with Kate and Curran, then, you know, that triggers the end of the world pretty much, because that will lead this big bad to Kate and Curran, and Julie has to do it on her own. She has to take kind of the steps to be the new Kate, so to speak. And I loved it. I cannot wait for more in this series. I'm waiting for news for the next book on this series. And this fantasy romance thing is going to be an Alona Andrews love fest. And as you will see, a Sarah J. Maas love fest, because reading through their series over the past year plus more for Alona Andrews is just everything. They give me everything. But we will move on. So our first Sarah J. Maas book is for May, and this is Heir of Fire. This is the third book in Throne of Glass, and this is the book that made me love Selena at the time. 5 stars. The way that it's touched about on the grief that she's dealt with for her family in the past and how she's never really confronted that, plus with the newer grief that she's dealing with Sam and Nehemia. And we really kind of get her recognizing and coming into herself and allowing herself to do what she feels she needs to do, and really kind of coming to terms with her being herself and becoming Aelin once again. And this book was so powerful. It touched me so much, especially with the grief stuff. And I was on board with Sarah J. Maas before this, but Heir of Fire, I was really the impetus for me being like, okay, this isn't just a series I'm enjoying. This isn't a series I like. This is a series I love and will stay with me. All right, and then June, back to Alona Andrews. We have Wildfire, which is the third book in the Hidden Legacy series, and this is the final book of Nevada's trilogy, and this is Nevada and Mad Rogan, and it's really her kind of really coming to full acceptance and really kind of pushing what she can do with her truth-seeking abilities and that magic that she has with her, and really kind of owning it and really doing what she can with it. And it was a great way to, I feel like they wrapped up her portion of the trilogy so well that there were enough little plot holes and little plot lines still to do that allowed Catalina to take over, but still feel like if you were to only read the first 3 books and read that as a trilogy by itself and never continue the story, you would still feel completely satisfied. And the way that Alona Andrews manages to do that and world build is absolutely phenomenal. I will probably say that for every one of these books, but yeah, it's Alona Andrews. And I love them, and 5 stars. And at some point, that will probably be where we're at. So for July, we've got one of Sarah J. Maas's most popular books, Court of Mist and Fury, the second book in her Court of Thorns and Roses series, and 5 stars. I mean, really, we get Feyre. Oh gosh, the first part of this book is so heavy. We get Feyre going with PTSD. We get Rhys going through PTSD. We get Tamlin going through PTSD. We get everybody going through PTSD from what happened under the mountain. And then for the people outside of Feyre, all the Fae who have been living through this for the last however long, from Amarantha being in power, and just kind of coming to terms on what happened, what they had to do to survive, plus what life is going to be like now, and how they are changed as people. And it really broke my heart to see Feyre struggling so much, and nobody really giving her the help that she was needing, and her not knowing how to ask for what she needed, and like how to help her. She didn't know how to ask, she didn't know what to ask for, but Rhys knew and was giving it to her. And I know people hate Tamlin, but that poor man is so broken inside. I really hope that at some point he gets an HEA, or he gets some sort of closure, or a chance in the storyline for us to see him really start to work through all of the crap he has going on and find himself, because himself wasn't a inherently bad person. And honestly, I know Feyre and Rhys, but Feyre wouldn't be Feyre if she didn't have that original relationship with Tamlin that really kind of gave her the confidence in herself and the introduction to being Fae in the Fae world and all this. And I mean, yeah, he does some horrible things, but I give him grace because he is struggling and he doesn't know how to ask for help. And being kind of the head of his court, he can't really, there's not very many people he can ask help from. And maybe it's also an ego thing, but he's also really hurt and struggling. And my heart breaks for him. And I hope that at some point he can be able to deal with his feelings and kind of move forward and start to live a better life for himself and his friends and find his friend groups again. But yeah, so but otherwise, Feyre and Rhys, I love the Court of Dreamers. I love Valeris. I love Cass. I love Ez. There's a reason this series is super popular, and I'm very grateful to Jen for starting this read along, so I finally have the impetus to read them. Okay, a one-off author here that isn't the same as everybody else, Megan Van Dyke. Okay, if you have not heard me talk about Megan Van Dyke before, she is a debut author from 2022. This is her debut book, Second Star to the Left. This is the first book in her reimagined fairy tale series, and it is a fantasy romance between Captain Hook and Tinkerbell. And it is amazing. 5 stars. I read this, halfway through this book, I was obsessed with Megan Van Dyke. She has a Courts of the Fairy series, and there's more books coming in this. The second book's already out. The third and fourth book are coming out in 2023. I cannot wait. I'm loving Megan Van Dyke. I cannot believe this is her debut book. It's so good. So 5 stars. I'm obsessed. If you have not read Megan Van Dyke and you like fairy tale retellings, you just like normal retellings, you like fantasy and romance, you like romance period, please read Megan Van Dyke. I can't tout her enough. I want to see her blow up like everybody else. I feel like, and it probably wasn't me, but I feel like Elsie Silver is like completely blowing up, and I'm so excited for her. And she was my favorite contemporary author in 2021. So if I could choose any new author that I read this year to blow up in 2023, Megan Van Dyke is the one. Please read Megan Van Dyke. I love Second Star to the Left. I loved the take on Tinkerbell and Captain Hook and the hijinks, and they're in the sea, and we get pirates, we get mermaids. It was so freaking good. And I'm not even a big Peter Pan person, but there we go. Okay, September. Oh, September. Ruby Fever. The last book in the Hidden Legacy series as for now. This is the final book in Catalina's trilogy. This was the new release for this year. 5 stars. As much as I thought Nevada's trilogy was wrapped up, the way that this was wrapped up is so bittersweet because this is the last traditionally published book that they had a contract for. And so we probably will be getting more Hidden Legacy. There are a lot of clues. There are a lot of leads leading up to whatever the youngest sister's books will be. I'm blanking on her name right now. Nevada, Catalina, and I don't remember. But this was just so brilliantly wrapped up that if we don't actually get any more, it feels like a complete series. Although there are those little threads, once again, that can be picked up. Going on to the third sister's books, but because everything's now indie, they aren't really announcing books outside of very close to release date anymore. And they aren't really telling us what they're working on anymore. They're working on what they want to work on, and which is very exciting because we're getting things like the recently announced surprise Kate Daniels spin-off series centered around Kate Daniels, the Wilmington years. Like, what? There's more Kate Daniels with Kate Daniels? Anyway, I'm very excited about that. And that comes out January 17th, so surprise, surprise, more Kate Daniels. But it was just so good. It was just so freaking good. It was perfect. And this one I feel like we'd see a little bit less of the romance between Catalina and Alessandro because they are solid at the beginning of this book. We don't need the drama between them. They are solid as a couple, and it just was beautiful to see. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Plus, we get a romance and a marriage of one of our side couples, and I love it, and I wish we had a novella so we could see more of what actually happened between them when, like, in the background, but this book was just so, like, I finished it, and it was like a happy kind of sadness because I absolutely loved it to pieces. Moving on to October, Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series, and this book changed my mind on Chaol. I am firmly aboard the Chaol train. He's still not my favorite hero in this series, but I do not dislike him anymore. And Yrene is one of my favorites heroines of Sarah J. Maas, period, let alone this series. I love Yrene. I love that she is strong in a completely different way. She's strong in her goodness and her kindness and her healing ability, and I loved the development of their relationship so much, and it was so gorgeous, and it was fun to see a completely different continent, and yeah, I loved it. I loved it. 5 stars. 5 stars. Okay, November was back to A Court of Thorns and Roses, and this was A Court of Frost and Starlight, the 3.5 novella, so to speak, Sarah J. Maas novella, which is more like a full-length novel for everybody else, but 3.5 in the series, 5 stars. I loved it. It's like a Christmas novella for Farron and Reason, but I loved that we get Cass's POV, we get Nesta's POV, we get Morgan's POV. I loved it. I love this series, and I'm excited to see kind of where the hints lead towards Nesta's book coming up, and I just love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, Kingdom of Ash was December's fantasy romance book because how could it not be? It was the final Throne of Glass book, and this book made me go through every emotion possible. Sadness, happiness, tears. I was laughing, I was smiling, I was bawling, I was frustrated, I was angry, I was relieved, and there was a moment I was confused on why one person had to die, and this is a way to finish off a fantasy series. It was just so brilliantly done. It's Sarah J. Maas, and it was amazing. So yeah, there we go. Okay, final 4 books to kind of chat about here. We have my 4 bonus books. So I had to throw Catalina's other book in here. This is Hidden Legacy number 5. The big bad final battle scene in this book lives in my mind rent free. It is so good. It is so mind-blowing on what is happening, and it's just, they're in the pit, and it just, the weird sentient creature that they're fighting, and that it's so good. And the way that it went down, I was on my toes. I couldn't read it fast enough to figure out what was happening. This series in particular, the Hidden Legacy series, is so cinematic in how they world build. I would love an Amazon Prime fantasy series of this book series, because Alexa, dismiss. It's like she knew I was talking about her. It just was it's so good. And this is probably one of my favorite big battle scenes of the series. And I cannot recommend this series more. I had to have all 3 of Catalina's books on my list here because it was just so good. Okay, bonus book 2. I could not have Grace Draven on here, and I went with Gaslight Hades, which is the first book in her Bone Keeper Chronicles series. This is steampunk, gaslamp, fantasy, romance, 4.5 stars. I enjoyed this so much. And we have our hero who is a bone keeper. So he had died and his body was so destroyed that they actually put him in a different body to become a bone keeper. And he runs into his former love when he was fully human. And her father has recently passed and is buried at the graveyard that he is tasked to keep watch over. And they reconnect. And it was just so sweet, and it was so interesting. I don't read very many gaslamp or steampunk fantasy books, and it was just so much fun to get that like steampunky and like the floating airships, but they're like it was so much fun. I did want a little bit more from the romance, but overall, the way that Grace Draven builds her worlds is just phenomenal. I mean, her and Alona Andrews I know they're friends because they both live in Texas, and Alona Andrews has talked about Grace Draven coming over for dinner at their house before. I would love to be a fly on the wall when they sit down and talk about fantasy world stuff, because it's gotta be just an amazing and brilliant conversation. So I had to have at least one Grace Draven, but I didn't read too much of her this year, but she is still one of my favorite fantasy authors. So I had to get at least one book that I read this year from her on this list. And then bonus book number 3, book number 10, Kate Daniels, Magic Triumphs, 5 stars. The way that Alona Andrews can wrap up a series is brilliant. The only thing I wished in this book is that we got to see a little bit more of their HEA, so to speak, and a little bit more of the happiness and everybody just being able to get back to what their new normal is after the big battle. But you know what? it was still 5 stars. And now that we know that there's a spin-off series centered around Kate, there's the UGA I was looking for. And I cannot wait. I cannot wait for Magic Tides. And this book was brilliant. The way that it just finished off and we get birth to their son, we get to see Conlon, and it just, the series is so good, and I can see myself rereading this and Hidden Legacy as a comfort read because they just were amazing. And then the final book that we have to talk about here, my bonus book number 4, is The Nutcracker of Crystal Fall. This is by K.L. Moody. So we get another one-off author thrown into my Alona Andrews and Sarah J. Maas love fest here. And this is the prequel novella to the Fae and Crystal Thorns series. This is a Nutcracker fantasy romance retelling, and I loved it. I am so intrigued to read more in this series. This is set, I feel like, pretty far in the past from where the rest of the series is, but there was a note from the author that you can read this at any point within the normal series. And this was free at Amazon when I got it, so definitely see if it's still free and check it out, because I enjoyed my time so much with this. It was really fun. I love the Nutcracker retelling aspect, and I'm very intrigued to kind of see what the rest of the series looks like. So I definitely want to read more in the series, but I gave this one 4 stars because I did think there was a little bit of cliche stuff that happened a couple of times, but overall I really enjoyed this. And if you're looking for a Nutcracker retelling, I recommend this one for sure. Now, those are all 16 books that are going on the prompt, but of course I had to throw in a couple honorable mentions, and I had more. I had 7 books, and I had to limit myself to 3 honorable mentions. So I had to do more Alona Andrews, as you can see. I couldn't not. So I have Iron and Magic by Alona Andrews. This is Iron Covenant number 1. This is a spin-off series from Kate Daniels focusing on Hugh. And this In the Kate Daniels Universe series is book 9.5. So you read this one before Magic Triumphs. I'm so excited. I hope more books come out in this Iron Covenant series. I wanted to learn more about Alara. It was really fun to kind of see Alara and Hugh do their enemies to lovers, marriage of convenience situation, and the way that they just managed to come together, and both of their people kind of meshed together because they really needed what the other had and their skill sets to stay alive and find a home. And it was great. It was really fun. Then we have The Orc from the Office by Kate Pryor. This is the second book in her Claws and Cubicle series, and this is a fantasy monster office romance. It was super fun. I gave this 4.5 stars. This was great. We've got Janice, and she is an HR person at Evil Company because the apocalypse has happened. Evil is in charge and is run like a huge corporation. So she works in HR, human resources, and Kent is an orc who works in IT, and she's struggling to open up a file cabinet, and he is walking by, stops to help her, and she somehow ends up elbowing him in the nose, drawing blood, and that triggers the mating bond between them. And so it's them accidentally becoming mated and trying to reverse the mating bond, and they have to deal with MR, monster resources, and it was just such a fun premise, and I had so much fun with this. You don't have to read the first book. I did read the first book. I didn't enjoy it as much, but this book was phenomenal. I loved it, and it is my favorite monster office romance. And it was really good. And then my third honorable mention I have to give to White Hot. This is the second book of Hidden Legacy. So this is the second book with Nevada and Rogan, and it's really kind of dealing, and this is really where we see their relationship really kind of form after the first book. I did also read the first book this year in the series, but it was a reread for me. So I did not include this in here because I tried not to include rereads. But I cannot recommend the Hidden Legacy series enough. And I mean, Matt Rogan is amazing and powerful. And I love the way that he just will do anything for Nevada. Plus, we get to see them pregnant in Ruby Fever, and it is so fun. Or maybe it's also Emerald Blaze. They're pregnant during Catalina's trilogy, so it's just so much freaking fun. I cannot recommend any of these authors more, and so yeah, that's it. That is my rundown of all the books that I have going on in my bracket, plus 3 honorable mentions. So let us get to actually filling out the bracket here. So, like I said, I am doing this all in Canvas. I have them all already prepped here. So we're just going to kind of go through and get things figured out. So, I'm kind of zoom in here. All right. So starting off, Magic Minds versus Tower of Dawn. Oh my gosh. I thought my contemporary one was hard decisions at times. This bracket is going to break my brain. This bracket is going to break my brain. Okay. I'm going to give it to Magic Minds. Yeah, we're going to go with that. Gut instinct. Let's move on. Sapphire Flames versus Kingdom of Ash. I have to give it to Kingdom of Ash because the way that finished that series was absolutely phenomenal. Okay. It's not quite centered, but I'll leave it. Whatever. Moving on. Air of Fire versus Gaslight Hades. I'm going to give it to Gaslight Hades. I enjoyed Air of Fire, but I definitely, even though it was like really the book that really made me fall in love with Sarah J. Maas completely, it definitely wasn't. I feel like Gaslight Hades really took me somewhere new. And I enjoyed that a little bit more. Court of Mist and Fury versus Nutcracker of Crystal Fall. I mean, Court of Mist and Fury, that is no question. Yep. That is what we're going to do there. That was an easy one. We don't want historical romance. Okay. Ruby Fever versus Enthralling the Orc. Ruby Fever. This is the end of Catalina and Alessandra's trilogy. Oh, it was so good. Okay. Sarah J. Maas. So, Court of Frost and Starlight versus Blood Heir. It's crazy that how much Alona Andrews and Sarah J. Maas I have on here. They ended up being paired against each other and like not against themselves, which is crazy. But I'm going to give this to Blood Heir. Blood Heir. Yeah, Blood Heir. Emerald Blaze. Okay, here we go. Alona Andrews versus Alona Andrews. Emerald Blaze versus Wildfire. I gotta give it to my girl Catalina. She is my favorite. Is she my favorite Alona Andrews heroine? Maybe. I don't know why you're not wanting to center. Why are you doing big jumps? This is driving me nuts. Zoom in. Super big. There. Okay. There. I feel better. Alright, we'll zoom back out here. Alright, Magic Triumphs versus Second Starts of the Left. Oh gotta give it to Second Star to the Left, even though Magic Triumphs was amazing. I gotta, Megan Van Dyke, I'm obsessed with, so I gotta give it to her. And I mean, I have other Alona Andrews to choose from on here, so it is fine. Okay. Round 1 is done. I'll zoom out here. So here's what we're looking at for round 1. Moving on to round 2. Oh my gosh. All right. Quarterfinals. Here we go. Magic Binds versus Kingdom of Ash. Kingdom of Ash. Hands freaking down. Okay. Gaslight Hades versus A Court of Mist and Fury. A Court of Mist and Fury. Okay. Ruby Fever versus Blood Heir. Oh, Ruby Fever. Oh, man. Oh, man. Okay. Hey, boo-boys. Emerald Blaze versus Second Star to the Left. Oh. You know, I'm gonna take Megan Van Dyke as far as I can get her here. Yep, I feel comfortable with that. Okay, so there was semifinals. So there we go. We are down to our semifinal round. Holy moly. This is actually going quicker than I thought it would. I think it helped. Last year when I went through the bracket, I talked about the 2 books in the beginning and then I chose them. But I feel like talking through all the books kind of helped me order them in my mind before we actually sat and filled out the brackets. So that's not bad. So, Ruby Fever versus Kingdom of Ash. Why do I do this to myself? Ruby Fever? Ruby Fever. Ruby Fever? Yeah. I'm not instantly having a gut reaction of no, I chose wrong. So, Ruby Fever. I'm going to go with that. I didn't instantly be like, oh, I chose wrong. So, we're going to go with Ruby Fever. Court of Mist and Fury versus Second Star to the Left. Second Star to the Left. Because I got to. All right, the semifinals are done. We are to our final book. Ruby Fever versus Second Star to the Left. Boy. Oh boy. I have to. As much as Megan Van Dyke is my new fantasy romance queen, Alona Andrews is my fantasy romance duo, because if you did not know, this is a husband and wife writing team. I just have to. There we go. Ruby Fever is officially my best fantasy romance of 2022. But like I said before, honestly, any of these books you could pick up and read and enjoy. Obviously, a lot of these are series-based. We've got Hidden Legacy. I mean, you could jump into the second trilogy of Hidden Legacy of just Catalina's books if you would like to. But I definitely do at least recommend reading them in the 3 chunks. If you just want to kind of read one sister and not the other, I wouldn't recommend jumping into Ruby Fever without at least reading Emerald Blaze and Sapphire Flames. I mean, the other ones on here, you can jump in, no problem. They're all first books in the series, but seriously, if you have not read Alona Andrews, I highly, highly recommend them. Hidden Legacy is definitely more romance-based, Alexa Dismiss. than the Kate Daniels series, but the Kate Daniels series does have some really good romance. There's some good romances for side characters that we see both in the main books plus in the a billion freaking novellas that they made for it. So yeah, that's it. I'm happy with this. I'm happy with this. I'm surprised the Sarah J. Maas book didn't win, but as much as I love Sarah J. Maas, she is newer to me, and Alona Andrews has been a stan of mine for a little bit longer, and Ruby Fever, just the way that it encapsulated, plus waiting so long for Ruby Fever to finally finish out Catalina's trilogy. Oh, it made me so happy. But yeah, there we go. All right, so there we have it. My favorite fantasy romance of 2022. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said before, if you choose to fill out your bracket as well, definitely let me know. I'd love to know if anybody actually uses them, but if not, that's fine. I enjoy using them, and I make them mostly for myself, but I want to share it in case other people are interested as well. But yeah, if you would like to leave me a comment below, leave me a red emoji in honor of Ruby Flames, or let me know what your favorite fantasy romance is of the year, or if you are interested in any of these that you have not tried yet. But like I said, I recommend any and all of these fantasy romances, even my honorable mentions. And yeah, so definitely check out my contemporary romance one. I linked it in my cards before, and it will be in the same playlist as this video. And then what I have coming next will be historical romance, will be coming next week, followed by paranormal, and then rounding off with sci-fi. So we are 2 out of 5 videos through figuring out my favorites, and I cannot wait to fill out the other brackets. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you all very soon.